The report says that you disagreed with the president's decision to halt waterboarding. You agreed with his decision to close the secret prisons. You disagreed with his decision to reach out to Iran and North Korea. Is that true?
Well, we had policy differences, no question about that. But pointed with the president isn't the way it ought to be phrased. I mean, the fact of the matter is, he encouraged me to give him my view on a whole range of issues. I did. Sometimes he agreed, sometimes he didn't. That was true from the very beginning of the administration.
Did you feel that he went soft in the second term?
I wouldn't say that. I think you're going to have to wait and read my book, Chris, for the definitive view.
It sounds like you're going to say something close to that.
No, I'm not going to speculate on it. I'm going to write a book that lays out my view of what we did. It'll also cover a lot of years before I ever went to work for George Bush.
Will you open up in the book about areas where you disagreed?
Sure.
With the president?
Sure.
There's a question I've wanted to ask you for some period of time. Why didn't your administration take out the Iranian nuclear program? Given what a threat I know you believe it was, given the fact that you knew that Barack Obama favored not only diplomatic engagement, but actually sitting down with the Iranians, why would you leave it to him to make this decision?
It wasn't my decision to make.
Would you have favored military action?
I was probably a bigger advocate of military action than any of my colleagues.
Do you think that it was a mistake while you were in power, while your administration was in power, not to go after the nuclear infrastructure of Iran?
I can't say that yet. We don't know how it's ultimately going to come out.
But you don't get the choice to make a 20/20 hindsight.
Well,
in 2007, 2008, was it a mistake not to take out their program?
I think it was very important that the military option be on the table. I thought that negotiations couldn't possibly succeed unless the Iranians really believed we were prepared to use military force. And to date, of course, they're still proceeding with their nuclear program, and the matter has not yet been resolved. We can speculate about what might have happened if we'd followed a different course of action. As I say, I was an advocate of a more robust policy than any of my colleagues, but I didn't make the decision. The president made the decision, and obviously we pursued the diplomatic avenues.
Do you think it was a mistake to let the opportunity when you guys were in power go, knowing that here was Barack Obama and he was going to take a much different?
I'm gonna, if I address that, I'll address it in my book, Chris.
It's going to be a hell of a book.
It's going to be a great book.
Was it a mistake for Bill Clinton, with the blessing of the administration, to go to North Korea to bring back those two reporters?
Well, obviously, you're concerned for the reporters and their circumstances. But I think if we look at it from a policy standpoint, it's a big reward for bad behavior on the part of the North Korean leadership. They are testing nuclear weapons. They've been major proliferators of nuclear weapons technology. They built a reactor in the Syrian desert, very much like their own reactor for producing plutonium for nuclear weapons. They probably are the worst proliferators of nuclear technology any place in the world today. And there ought to be a price for that. Instead, I think when former President of the United States goes and meets with the leader and so forth, that we're rewarding their bad behavior. And I think it's a mistake.
You wouldn't have done it?
No.
How concerned are you about the increase in violence in Iraq since we pulled out of the major population areas? And also, what do you make of the fact that the top Shiite parties have formed an alliance tilting towards Iran and leaving out Prime Minister Maliki?
Well, I'm concerned about Iraq, obviously. I have been a strong supporter of our policies there from the very beginning. I think we made major efforts to take down Saddam Hussein's regime, establish a viable democracy in the heart of the Middle East. I think especially going through the surge strategy in 07 and 08, we achieved very significant results. It's important that we not let that slip away. And we need to be concerned, I think, in these days now, at the beginning of the new administration. I'd like to see them focus just as much on victory as they are focused on getting out. And I hope that they don't rush to the exit so fast that we end up in a situation where all of those gains that were so hard won are lost.
Given the increase in violence, given some of these new issues in terms of the political lay of the land, given President Obama's plan to pull all combat troops out by a year from now, the summer of 2010, how confident are you that Iraq, as a stable, moderate country, is going to make it?
I don't know. I don't know that anybody knows. I think it's very important that they have success from a political standpoint. I think the Maliki government's doing better than it was at some points in the past. I hope that we see continued improvement in the Iraqi armed forces and security services. But I think to have an absolute deadline by which you're going to withdraw that's totally unconditioned, developments on the ground, I think there's a danger there that you're going to let the drive to get out overwhelm the good sense of staying long enough to make certain the outcome is what we want.
Obviously, this weekend, the country is focused on the death of Ted Kennedy. What'd you think of him?
Well, I personally, I liked him. In terms of policy, there's very little we agreed on. He was a liberal Democrat from Massachusetts. I was a conservative Republican from Wyoming. So there wasn't much that we had to work together on. On the other hand, I admired the fact that he got into the arena as much as he did for most of his professional life and was obviously a very active participant.
How are you adjusting to life out of power?
Well, this is the fourth time I've done it, Chris, so it's not my first rodeo, as we say. I'm enjoying private life. I just, excuse me, took my family on an Alaskan cruise for a week, all the kids and the grandkids. We've gotten to spend a great deal of time in Wyoming, which, as you can tell here in Jackson Hole, is one of the world's finer garden spots. So I have, I think, adjusted with a minimal amount of conflict and difficulty. It's been pretty smooth.
What do you miss?
Oh, I'm a junkie, I guess. All those years, I spent more than 40 years in Washington, and enjoyed obviously the people I worked with, wrestling with some of the problems we had to wrestle with. I enjoyed having the CIA show up on my doorstep every morning, 6 days a week with the latest intelligence. Sure.
Why?
Because it was fascinating. It was important stuff. It kept you plugged in with what was going on around the world, and as I say, I'm a junkie from a public policy standpoint. I went to Washington State 12 months and stayed 41 years. I liked it. I thought it was important, and I'll always be pleased that I had the opportunity to serve.
Do you miss having your hands on the levers of power?
No, I don't think of it in those terms.
But I mean, being able to affect things. You obviously feel strongly about these issues.
Right.
Do you miss the fact that now you're just another guy watching cable news?
No, and as I say, I've been there before. And I left government after the first Nixon term. I went to the private sector. Then I left after the Ford administration and ran for Congress. And then left after my Secretary of Defense and went to the private sector. So these are normal kinds of transitions that you've got to make in this business. And what I've always found is that there are compensating factors to living a private life, to having more freedom and time to do what I want, and to spend more time with the family, which is very important. Over the years, I've sacrificed a lot in order to be able to do those things I've done in the public sector.
Well, we want to thank you for talking with us and including in your private life putting up with an interview from the likes of me.
It's all right. I enjoyed the show, Chris.
Thank you very much, and all the best, sir.
Okay. Good luck.